Hey guys, how's it going? Today we're going to do a quick breakdown of the Storm Javelin. This includes weapons, melee, seals, support seals, which ability is a primer, and which is a detonator. Once again, we're going to use Dragonfire 04's chart as a reference. The gameplay in the background is legendary contract the dev team showcased. I'll link every single source in the description below. Let's begin with weapons. They are pretty much the same as Ranger. Storm can use every weapon besides heavy weapon. Now before we go any further, I would like to explain what seals are. Storm uses a powerful technology known as seal to boost the latent kinesis powers of its lancer. In other words, seals are the abilities the Storm uses. Instead of using a grenade or a mortar, you would end up using seals when you play as Storm. Another thing to keep in mind is that even though the Storms can dish out a lot of damage, they have very little defense. And that is why Storm should be always above the battlefield fighting from air. Blast Seal. So the first thing we have is Lightning Strike. Lightning Strike is exactly what it sounds like. You strike down a bolt of lightning in an area doing damage to all the enemies. Lightning Strike is a detonator and it also does electric damage. Ice Storm. Ice Storm creates a field of ice that deals damage. It does damage rapidly, building up to a final explosion of frost. It does frost damage, and as far as we know, it is neither a primer or detonator, but that is all subject to change. Next, we have Flame Burst. Flame Burst is a quick explosion that deals fire damage at a target location. Flame Burst does fire damage. As far as we know, neither a primer or a detonator, but once again, we're going to have to wait and see. Rime Blast. Rime Blast fires a flurry of ice projectiles that deal damage and freeze close range targets. Rime Blast is also a primer and it does frost damage. So this is one of the abilities that you can use as a Storm to prime up enemies and freeze them, and then use your Lightning Strike to detonate the enemies. Another thing to keep in mind is that Rime Blast is a close range ability, so probably won't be super effective at sniper length ranges. Living Flame is a burst of flame that seeks out and ignites target. So this ability is actually more of a tracking ability because it seeks out targets for you. It does fire damage and it is a primer, so you could burn people and set them off to combo. Those are all the blast seals. Now we're going to move on to focus seals. Right off the bat, we have Hoarfrost Shards. Hoarfrost Shards rapidly fire shards of ice that slowly freeze a target in place. Hoarfrost Shards are a primer and they do frost damage. Next ability we have is called Flaming Orb, also known as Fireball. This is a pretty cool fire ability because you could use it in multiple ways. You could either shoot it super quickly, sending out small fireballs at enemies, or you could charge it for a larger projectile that explodes. Flaming Orb and or Fireball is a detonator and it does fire damage. Ball Lightning. Ball Lightning is actually a pretty cool tactical ability. What it does is that you discharge electric energy that can be bounced off walls to reach targets behind cover. So it's kind of like a ricochet ability, and I think that's pretty cool. Ball Lightning is also a primer and it does shock damage. Next we have Glacial Beam. Glacial Beam fires a beam of powerful ice energy in a targeted direction. It is a detonator and it does frost damage. It is still unclear as to how long the beam would last. I don't know if it's a beam that you just shoot and run away, or if it's a beam that you're going to have to constantly keep on an enemy until it runs out. That's just something we're going to have to wait for and see for ourselves. Next we have Arc Burst. Arc Burst unleashes a blast of lightning that will leap to nearby enemy targets for heavy damage. So far we don't know whether or not it's a primer or detonator. It may not be either of those things, it may stay the same. However, it does do electric damage. From the wording of it, it seems like it is an ability that you cast on yourself and then it goes to nearby enemies from you instead of you casting it on a nearby target. That being said, let's get into the melee ability. So every Javelin obviously has a melee ability, as we all know. Storm's melee ability is called Fiery Strike. It's a very defensive ability. What it does is that the Storm uses a seal on its arm to deliver an explosive flash, and that deals damage and knocks back enemies that have gotten too close. Basically giving Storm some room so it can reposition itself, fly back up, and get back into the fight. The melee is also a detonator, so you could also use it for those purposes, and it does fire damage. Now we're up to the ultimate, Elemental Storm. Right off the bat, it is a primer and it is a detonator, and it does frost, flame, and electric damage. With this ability, the storm emits successive blasts of frost, electricity, and fire, ending it with a meteoric finale. In other words, it completely wrecks everything. Now that we have gotten over all of the offensive abilities, let's go over the support seals. Support seal number 1. Wind Wall. It generates a defensive wall of wind that deflects incoming enemy projectiles. It is basically a wall that you can shoot through and enemies cannot hit you. Next we have Nexus. Nexus creates a field which provides gear cooldown reduction to teammates who enter its radius. That could be very useful when it comes to comboing enemies, mainly because if you want to combo an enemy, you have to use your ability. And with that, we have come to an end of our breakdown. I will link all of the sources in the description below so you can check these out for yourselves. If you have any questions, ask them to me down below. If you found this video informative, a like would be much appreciated. If you want to stick around for more Anthem content, hit that subscribe button.